Hello, welcome back to the Mobile Motorbike Mechanic channel. I'm Steve. You might notice a haircut, might notice a bit of a tan, been on holiday. But we're back on this R1200 GS and we're going to finish this one off by replacing the oil in the rear differential, and we're going to grease up the drive shaft from the gearbox to the rear diff. Right, so here we are down at the back end of the bike. This is your rear differential and this is the drain plug. So we need to undo that drain plug. Now you might think, hang on a minute, why is that not on the bottom of the diff? The reason why it's not on the bottom of the diff will become apparent later in the video. But this is your drain plug, and then your fill plug is actually behind the caliper around here, when it's actually where the ABS sensor screws into the rear diff. So we need to get those two off, which means we've got to get the wheel off. To get the wheel off, got to take this mud guard off. And that one there. Alright, so all we're going to do is we're just going to loosen the nuts off, or the bolts I should say. Oh, loosen them off just with the bike on the ground, because then it gets quite difficult to do this if the bike's on the centre stand. Notice I'm not taking the bolts out, just loosening them. We don't want the bike to fall over. Right, that's enough of that. Let's get the bike on the centre stand. Easy. And now we can carry on and take the bolts out of the rear wheel. There should be just enough clearance to get the wheel past this exhaust. If you've got an aftermarket exhaust on your bike, you might have to take the exhaust off, but hopefully not. Okay, with the wheel out of the way, we can get to the ABS sensor here. So this is where we're going to fill the rear diff up when we're back, when we're filling it back up again. So we'll pop the caliper off, and then that will just give us a little bit more room to get out of the way of this caliper bracket. Caliper should be just, oh, that was tight. It should be just these two caliper retaining bolts here. There we go. So this diff is a bit of a pain to drain out, because what you got to do is you got to take the bolt out and then tip the whole thing down and let it run out. So you might be thinking, hang on, you say that's a drain bolt but it's not on the bottom. That's the reason why it's on the end. But there we go. Right, let's get this rear caliper going. There's one bolt. And there's two. Yeah. So now we've got the bolt out of the ABS sensor. There's also a retaining bolt for the wiring up under here. So So we'll just get that one gone as well. That's the wiring loose now. Just going steady with the ABS sensor, we don't want to break it, but it will gradually wobble out. There we go. I'm just going to pass it up. And there we have it. I'll pop that over to one side as well. Right, so with the ABS sensor and the rear caliper, we've just strapped them up out of the way to the subframe here. We need to get this bolt out here. So 16mm on this one and a T50. So we'll just undo it. There we go. She's coming apart. Right, so with the nut taken off the back of the bolt there, that's ready to come out. And we've jengered our way up with a few lumps of wood. Now the reason why I'm using these bits of wood is just so when we take that bolt out, we can just support the back end for 2 seconds whilst we're putting bolts away and things. So if you didn't have these bits of wood here, when you took this bolt out, this just drops down onto the floor. You might damage the disc, you might, knacker other things. And the bellows are now starting to come away. And if you look inside there, even though it's dark, you can start to see the drive shaft in there. Okay, so the next bit you need to be sort of under a little bit of control with. So let's pop that in the bolt top. Now, as we drop this down, what you'll notice is there's your drive shaft. And what we need to do is we need to try and get our splines off. So you can rotate on the disc back and forth until, there we go, that's it. And gradually take these pieces of wood out and you'll drop the whole lot down onto the floor. There's your bellows gone, and as you can see, there's your drive shaft going up to your gearbox, and this is what we want to grease, these splines and these splines. Right, so I've got a drain pan ready to go. So what we can do is we can pull the drain pan in, undo our drain plug on the rear diff, which should come out reasonably easily, he says. There we go. And drop it down and allow all of that fluid to run out. Right, whilst this is draining out, if we come and have a look in here, we can see the state of this back end is minging. So what we'll do, we'll give that a really good clean. We won't put any sort of cleaner inside here, but we will give it a good clean. But we'll get some cleaner on all of this lot and tidy it all up a bit. A couple of big chunks missing out of there. Something's hit that. What you can do, if you're going to get really into it, is take this pin out and take this unit off and give it a really good clean. But we're not into it that much, are we? We just want to make sure it's clean and tidy in here, which it will be. That's looking a hell of a lot better already. In fact, clean inside the splines and get all the old grease out. One thing you don't want to do is pull on this shaft and disconnect it up the top end, because it's a right bugger getting it back in again. We do want to give it a decent clean. Right, so we've cleaned up the drive shaft and the pin on the bevel box there. We've also taken a moment to clean up the bellows and just wash them all out with a bit of cleaner and what have you. Just inspecting these, we've noticed there is a bit of a split on the bellows as well. So I'll have to replace this at a later date because we haven't got a replacement bellows and we want to get this video sort of out to you. So that'll be going on my shopping list because this is my bike. But yeah, when you're taking it all apart, just make sure that you inspect it, and if you do see a crack like that, make sure you get the bellows replaced because it's not good. Anyway, on to re-greasing your splines. So we've got a bit of CV grease, molly grease, whatever you want to call it, and all we're going to do is, if you've got a little brush, it's a lot easier, but a little finger, and you just want to, remember, a little bit goes a long way, and you're just going to pop a little bit inside the splines on the shaft. Boom, boom, boom. And then once that's all done, you don't need much. This one's looking quite good. I've seen these where this part's all orange and rusted, but this one's actually looking pretty good. Should do really, shouldn't it, I suppose. So a little bit of grease on the splines there, and then same again, a little bit of grease on the splines on the box. Like I say, you don't want to go mad with it, you just want to put a little bit on. Yeah, like I say, with that nicely greased up, we can start looking at putting it all back together again. Right, so we're ready to put the bevel box back onto the drive shaft. So we've put a new O-ring on the drain plug there. I'm just going to pop a little bit of rubber grease on it just to help it slip in. There we go. Now the reason why I'm doing this first is just mainly to make life a bit easier for myself. So with the drain plug ready to go, we're just going to pick the differential up, and we're just going to pop that drain plug in. And all that's going to do is that's just going to stop any last little bits of oil coming out and covering you. Okay, get rid of the drain pot. We can start building up our pieces of wood again. Right, so now we're in a pretty good position to reattach this part of the bevel box onto the trailing arm. This is where it gets fun. Right, preparation is key. So what we need is the trailing arm bolt, and we need to get yourself in position behind the bike, and we need the boot ready to go on. Now the reason why we need all these things ready to go is because once this boot goes on here, you can't see what you're doing. You can see that needs to match up with those splines and drop in, which is awkward to say the very least. So it's going to be like that, and then it's suddenly going to drop in like that, and then all of a sudden you need to get your finger on the bolt and put it in, but you need to do all that with those in place, so you ain't going to be able to see any of that. So expect swearing. Right, let's go for it. Right, so first things first, we need to put our bellows back on and clip into place. And now you've got to do it all by feel, which is easier said than done. You know when it's on because it will just slide up into place. Is that it? No, that's not it. There we go. Ta-da! Done. Right, washer on and nut. Right, so with the drain bolt done up and our torque arm bolt done up, we're ready to refill 7590, 220mm on this make, on this model. All the other GSs for some reason are 180, but on this one 220mm. So we'll chuck 220mm back in the rear diff, and then we can refit our ABS sensor, which will plug the hole. So we've got 100mm syringe, so we're just going to do obviously 2 of these and then an extra 20. Now, it does take a little while for the fluid to go in, but it'll go. Just don't go too mad with it, or else it won't sink down and it will all just pour out the hole. With the gearbox, bevel box, whatever you want to call it, tops up. Oh, we need the O-ring for that. Okay. Right, and now we can put the bolt back in that one. All these little fellas. And before we forget, I'll just get that retaining clip for the wiring back on there as well. Right, because we're not perfect, we did have a little bit of a spillage filling this one up. So just to get rid of any excess oil, we're just going to get a bit of brake cleaner and we'll just give it a quick wash off, just to make sure that we don't get any of that flinging out onto the back of the bike. And because we've been handling the disc with oily hands, we'll get a reasonably clean cloth and just do the disc as well. Right, with that all cleaned up, we can get the rear caliper back on again. So just a question of, whilst we're here, we may as well have a quick look at the pads. The pads are all good, so we don't need to replace them at the moment. Right, a couple of bolts, get that fitted. Now, there are stories out there about these bolts needing to be replaced every time this caliper's taken off. I've seen a video where the calipers come off the bike on a guy riding on a motorway. I've seen that, seen the accident. So I don't know. Do they need to be replaced every time? Or do you just need to make sure they're done up sufficiently? I don't know. With this bolt, this is the carrier for the mudguard. So just pop that in and make sure he's lined up before you do this one up. Because if you don't, that will turn and then you'll never get that bolt in. Calipers back on, so we can feed the rear wheel back in again and get that mounted up. Right, so we've got the rear wheel on, got the bolts tight but not torqued down correctly. So in order to do that, we're just going to pop it back off the centre stand, and now we can torque those bolts up with the weight of the bike on the rear wheel to stop it moving around. Right, wheel back on. So last thing to pop back on again is our rear guard here. Remembering which bolts went where. Right folks, that's this one all done. So we're all back together again at the back end here. I need to change those bellows at some point in the future, so that's a job for me. But for this video, it's all back together again. Part 1, where we did the oil and filter on this. Part 2, where we did the air filter and the plugs. Links are in the description. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you again next time.